So with that, we'll get into today's topic, which is annuities and retirement planning, like how to um, include annuities in a plan, evaluate plans with annuities. And this coincides with, we just announced the launch of Income Lab's new annuity features. So we will spend some time today looking at the software, entering annuities, evaluating annuities, what are some of the kind of new ways that you wouldn't have seen before to look at how annuities work, understand them, and see whether annuities are a good or bad idea for a client's retirement plan. But before we get into that, I thought it would be a good time to, because we're launching sort of a new suite of features, and those of you who use Income Lab or follow us know that we have a pretty fast product cadence. We put out new things all the time. So in fact, we just launched Medicare IRMA bracket management a couple days ago, or maybe a week ago. So there's things coming all the time. But just stepping back, like what is it that guides the way that we build software? What's our mission, and what are sort of the principles that guide this? So our mission is on our website is to revolutionize how people navigate retirement so they can live with confidence. And some of those words in there you'll probably recognize, things like navigate, because we are all about helping people understand not just today, but how they might need to make turns or adjustments in the future. And with confidence, especially maybe if you go back to that first masterclass we did with Jason Jewell, we talked a lot about what people actually want out of retirement, which is to live the best life they can, given the resources they have and the years and health that they're given. So doing the best you can. It's not about kind of injecting fear or anxiety. And unfortunately, a lot of the software that we use, things around probability of success, can lead to heightened anxiety. So we're definitely fighting against that. When it comes to products, so new features in our software, there's a bunch of things that guide our thinking. Probably above all, it is, what do advisors need? What are advisors asking us for? So Medicare, IRMA bracket management, that was because that was something that was needed, had a big impact on people's lives. And many of our the advisors who use our software were asking for it. But stepping back further from that, we base all of our product development on these kind of, you could think of them as values. So integrity, we want them, they need to be, based on the reality of the world, right? We found that every time we make software closer to how the world really works, closer to how a retiree really lives their life, the retiree wins. Innovation, we don't want to just do the same things everybody else does, right? So we try very hard not to just kind of copy things, but we want to provide new ideas, new tools, new ways of viewing things. Hopefully we've succeeded thus far. Insight, we want to give kind of advisors and clients that aha moment with certain things. Accuracy, for sure, we're kind of scrupulous about this. I try to hide it, but I'm a total nerd, and so when we produce new software, we want things to be absolutely scrupulously following things as close as we can. Ease of use, hopefully you'll see some of that today. Completeness, so this is an ongoing process. We continue to add features. We're focused on retirement income planning, so things that are used widely or are true widely of retirees, we want to make sure that we can handle those easily. And finally, client-centeredness, that kind of comes back to that mission of, we want any new features to help a client understand their life and their world, not confuse them or cause unnecessary anxiety. So, on the innovation side, we could go back and think about all the things that Income Lab has done that really kind of changed the game around retirement income planning. One is kind of this shift from, what do you want in retirement to what can you have, right? How much can I spend? But all sorts of other things. We've written articles on this kind of stuff. We're the only software that I'm aware of, for example, that models inflation risk. It actually allows inflation to vary. Mortality risk, we just had a webinar last month on how we handle mortality risk, something that is not well handled in most software. And so today we're going to be talking about any kind of innovation in clarity around annuities. And the vision behind all of this, since we shared our mission, I'll share our vision as well, is we want to unlock financial competence for every retiree in the world. So the way that we tend to do that is we want to find places where, let's face it, the financial world is complicated, right? It's complex. There's jargon, there's math. And we actually, in order to be more client-centered and really help even advisors understand the world better, we want to move away from jargon and move toward just the question of how could this affect my life? So you see on the left kind of a typical, I call this the spaghetti chart or the squid chart, that you might see in kind of Monte Carlo, static software that says, well, what would happen if I do this? And this happens to be, correspond to something that would have had a 75% probability of success. You can see both those terms, and this methodology is very jargony. It's very, complex and technical, but it also doesn't lead to very good client experience. And what people really want to know is, given my situation, how can I live my life? So they want to know, hey, how would any particular decisions affect my life? And what you see here is our main dashboard. That's really the place where you start answering that question, right? So this says, how much do I have? How much can I spend? What would change that? So you've got the guardrails down there. The green guardrail says what would allow me to spend more. The red guardrail tells me what to spend, when I would have to spend less. And I get to see what those changes might actually look like. So much more clarity on the right than on the left. In the world of annuities, there is a major problem just like this, which is that annuities are incredibly complex. They've got all sorts of jargon, moving parts, bells and whistles, knobs and levers. So if you have run into annuities before, or if you're an annuity expert, you certainly know some of these terms. There are many more I could have put up here. And the fact is, annuity products and options have all sorts, kind of a crazy mix of these things. And it's really hard to evaluate what the impact of an annuity would be on someone's life, right? You can't look at a participation rate of 60% and say, oh, okay, I know what that'll do. I know how that'll change my spending. I know how that'll change my guardrails. No, there's no way to do that. And so we wanted to allow advisors to kind of cut through the jargon and really just answer this question with respect to annuities, how would this affect my life? And really just provide a lot more clarity around how annuities work or don't work. So there's 3 things I'll go over today for annuities in retirement plans. And we'll also go over just the nitty-gritty of sort of what sorts of things we currently cover in our annuity features and some upcoming things as well. But other than that, we'll cover these 3 things. Evaluating the impact of an annuity on a plan, exploring the annuity itself to understand how it works, because, like I said here, you can't just sort of read these specs and understand, oh, I get it. I understand exactly how this will work. And then comparing annuities head to head. So these are 3 aspects of the annuity features that we just launched. And I think it's interesting to note, back to kind of our product, things that lead our product innovation. We actually don't have a horse in this race. So we are, in our software and in our company, completely product agnostic. Our goal is to help advisors actually build great retirement plans. And so when we built the ability to model annuities in Income Lab, we actually didn't know what the result would be. We didn't know if it would make annuities, if the impact was going to be good, bad, or indifferent, or some mix of those. And that's still our attitude. So I think there's going to be a lot of interesting discoveries and research around this. We'll probably at some point do some research and put it out there. But that's our approach to all product development. So when we launched Medicare IRMA bracket management, we didn't have an opinion, or we weren't hoping that bracket management would be good or bad. It would just, sometimes it'll if we're just going to give you just the facts and then allow you to to create plans around those. So let's go to the app here. Maybe I'll actually, before going into those three things of evaluating the plan, evaluating the annuity, and doing head-to-head comparisons, I'm just going to show you the kinds of things that we cover in annuities. So there's a couple ways you can add an annuity to a plan. What I did there is I just went to the pencil icon at the top. You could also do it in LifeHub, by the way. But I go to Assets, and there's a new tab here. So we have investment accounts, and then we have annuities. And currently, by annuities, we mean annuities with lifetime or at least some kind of income guarantee. We are adding more and more features to annuities, so there will be some additional options here soon. But for now, that's what we mean by annuities. And the two annuity types we're covering right now are variable annuities and fixed index annuities. Registered index-linked annuities are coming very soon. And then you can also do SPIAs, so single premium immediate annuities, and DIAs, deferred income annuities, including QLACs, in a different part of the software. But we're going to focus today just on fixed index annuities and variable annuities inside of that have living benefits. So what kinds of features do we cover here? As I said, we have variable and fixed index. Soon we'll have RILAs. And the main things that we want to point out are, if this were a variable annuity, you would simply set its asset allocation. But for a fixed index annuity, we do have a default large cap price index. Price index because typically fixed index annuities do not have total return they're not based on total return indexes, and so that's a difference in return. If you wanted to build sort of a custom index, you can do that by mixing and matching asset classes. And if you do that, there is a spot that I'll show you in a second where you can then add a reduction in the return to account for lack of dividends if it is a price index that's being used. Okay, so that's one way that we're trying to be accurate to how these things work. I go into annuity settings for most of this stuff. So annuities with living benefits tend to have what's called a benefit base. They may have lots of other terms for this. We tried to be kind of neutral. And then a percentage that the annual guaranteed income is based on. We cover a variety of ways for the benefit to increase during deferral. So you can do either a roll-up, which is how much is that benefit base going to grow every year, barring performance in the annuity, or a withdrawal rate increase. So this says, this annuity happens to start at a 6% guaranteed withdrawal rate. So every year you wait, it's going to go up that much. So it'll be 6.5, 7, 7.5, and so on. I'm not an annuity expert. I don't know the current annuity market perfectly or anything like that. So I'm sure some of you who know annuities might think, oh, that number should be higher or lower or something. That's fine. You put in the numbers correctly for you. And then during the withdrawal phase, once you start taking income from the annuity, you can either have that amount go up only if the balance hits a high watermark, or you can base it on what returns would be credited to the annuity based on the index and the cap rates and so on. So this one is actually only available for fixed index annuities. For variable annuities, you would only have the balance high watermark. There's lots of other little fine tuning you can do for these settings. I'm not going to go into all of them right now. If somebody has questions on them, we can ask that. For fixed index annuities, we have this concept of a crediting method. So your performance is tied to an index. Okay, how's that actually work? Here I'm using what's called a cap, and the current value of the cap is 6%, meaning the most that'll be credited to the account is 6%. Could be less, but never below 0. In this case, I have the cap change. And in this case, after 5 years, I have it going down to 2%. So this is a way to kind of, one of the real challenges with annuity planning is we don't really know what annuity values will be in the future, caps and fees and things like that. And so we give you a way to kind of plan very conservatively here, for example, including a reduction in the cap. And then there's a spot for fees. Fixed index annuities don't typically have an overall annuity expense that's built into the cap, but they do often have living benefit fees. This is also a place where if you were doing an advisory annuity, you could add a fee there. Okay, so I think that covers most of the annuity options. As I said, you'll see slightly different options for, accrediting methods option there for variable annuities.
Just a quick question on that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
We are having a lot of questions, and everyone, please, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A versus in the chat. They get buried as people add comments and stuff, so it's hard to find them. But someone did ask, what about MIGAs? Are we offering multi-year guaranteed annuities?
Really good question. So we may add them as a separate type at some point. I think that'll be most useful once so what we're going to do is right now we only model annuities with living benefits, but very soon we will have this same structure. It'll look just like this, but in annuity settings, you'll be able to tell us the distribution. So you'll be able to say, hey, this doesn't have a living benefit. I'm just going to take money out, whatever. I'm going to take it all out in 5 years, or I'm going to take it out over 10 years or something like that. At that point, multi-year guaranteed annuities, so fixed annuities, things like that will make more sense. For now, if you did have a living benefit in an annuity, one of the options under crediting methods actually is a fixed rate. So that essentially would be, and again, it allows you to do kind of a two-phase interest rate. But at the moment, that annuity would have a living benefit. If you just wanted to see its performance, you could do that by changing the withdrawal rate to 0 or something, and then you would just see it grow because it would never take any withdrawals.
And one more question: what if the withdrawal rate is increasing every year of deferral, and there is a roll-up rate also? How do you model that? So you might touch on that in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a place where we did talk with advisors who use annuities and really try to cover as much as possible. If you have annuities that have, both a roll-up and a withdrawal rate increase, please let us know about them. We'd be happy to, simply allow you to do both of these instead of choosing one or the other. So yeah, if there's, what we did in designing this was we tried to cover as much ground as, no illusions that, this is not something where you can sort of pick a particular annuity, by prospectus from some company. We're trying to be generic enough that you can cover a lot, but specific enough that you can really roll. For example, if I did a roll up, I can specify: is it a simple roll up? Is it compounded? Is it stackable? Is it non-stackable? What's the roll up based on? When does guaranteed growth end? Because often that guaranteed growth is only for a particular amount of time, even if you're not taking withdrawals. There's a lot of specificity here, but I'm sure there are spots that we haven't covered. So please reach out to us and maybe point us to, if you have an illustration or a product description or something, or connect us with someone who knows more about it. We're happy to add features here if it's going to be useful to you.
And we have a few more questions rolling in about annuities, but we'll let you keep going here. One person did ask for the MIGAs. Is that, you said very soon? Is that a month or 2 months, or?
Yeah, it should probably be, it'll definitely be within 2 months. I don't want to overpromise, so let's say 2 months. It may be less than that, but.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so that covers a bit of what we cover. As I said, there are more settings and things, but you can really go down a rabbit hole. What I just showed you is the jargon stuff, right? That list of all that. I mean, and there's more jargon that you could use. So backing up to, all right, so what? Like, what does this mean? How can I use Income Lab to do annuity planning or include annuities in my plan? So just to remind you, if you're new to Income Lab, there are a couple places of the app that that you might, that have things that aren't all that familiar to you. So what you see here is a plan with a couple who has $2 million. But that's not their only resources. As I said, what we're trying to do is answer the question, what can I spend based on what I have and the years of health I'm given, right? So I built a very simple plan, but I didn't want it to be too simple. So I did add some Social Security. They're both taking Social Security at full retirement age or normal retirement age. And so you can see here, one part of planning is how are we going to kind of layer these things in over time? And this, you're seeing something that Derek Tharp and I have called the retirement hatchet, retirement distribution hatchet, where early in retirement, we're depending a lot on the portfolio. And then as Social Security comes in, we depend less. So this is very common. And it's one of the many reasons that, if a client comes to you thinking that they're going to take 4% from their portfolio, you can show them this and say, hey, I understand where that comes from, but that's not actually realistically the way people do things. So if you look at this number and you say, wait a second, 8,400, if I change that to annual, $100,000, that's not 4%, right? Well, that's because that is simplistic planning. That's not how we do planning. Okay, so there's another part of the plan though, which is, this is how much we're going to spend today, and we'll keep doing that until we think a change is needed. That could just be an inflation adjustment, but it could also be that my spending has become too risky or in one of two directions. So the way that we come up with this number is we say we need a spending level that balances the two important risks in retirement, the risk of overspending and the risk of underspending. You're all probably familiar with the risk of overspending. No one wants to overspend, overtax their resources and run out of money. But the risk of underspending is actually incredibly common. And the way that we do retirement planning today, we actually run into that probably very incredibly often. Basically, that would be spending less than you actually would like to, foregoing experiences, and then regretting it once you reach an older age and have more assets than you can find ways to spend. So we're trying to balance that. And the guardrails come in if one of those risks gets too high. So the upper guardrail means that your risk of underspending, your risk of regret has gotten too high. It's time to spend more. The lower guardrail is that your risk of overspending has gotten too high. It's time to spend less. Okay. You can evaluate what a longer term experience could look like using our retirement stress test. So imagine, that a plan like this, had, in kind of the old way of thinking, had a 90% probability of success, and then you hit it with the global financial crisis or something. Instead, you have a 50% probability of success. That doesn't make clients feel good. Instead, what we're trying to show here is what's the effect of having guardrails on your retirement, acknowledging the fact that you as an advisor actually can help clients adjust through time. Probability of success basically says you can't, that nothing I can do for you after now. And you'll see typically in the retirement stress test that even in some of the worst, most iconic periods in history, the adjustments that were needed to keep a plan on track were relatively small and temporary. So the key thing to note here with the retirement stress test is, the difference between having to deal with a client, seeing the probability of success go from 90 to 50 or 90 to 60, deal with all that versus minor and temporary adjustments. One is a much better experience, and it's actually more accurate. Okay, so this is a great place to evaluate what adding an annuity to the plan could look like, because there's sort of two things you could do. If an annuity can affect two things. It could affect how much you can spend today if you wanted to keep risk the same, right? So it could mean, you could spend more or you have to spend less, right? It could move the spending up or down. Or you could build a plan where the spending, is the same, but it changes the ride along the way. It changes whether your income would have been volatile. So it might make it less volatile, or it could make it more volatile in certain situations. And so that's what we're going to see here. I've chosen these examples to go with the second approach, where I tried to build plans that had the same, at least initial spending level, so that we could just focus on the ride. How bumpy is the ride? And the fact is, you actually could look at both, right? You could spend more and see if the ride gets smoother, or spend less and see if the ride gets smoother. But I'm trying to keep it simple here. So what I did is I took this plan. You already saw it. It's $2 million and a couple of Social Securities. People in their 60s, roughly a 30-year plan. So I didn't, not rocking the boat on normal things here. Also, you'll notice I'm planning to spend exactly the same amount adjusted for inflation through time. That's not always how people plan. We have the retirement smile that you can use in plans, and often people do, and that really can affect plans. But for simplicity, we're just keeping it simple. Okay, so in the retirement stress test, we also have this option up here at the top. You see these 3 options, and if any plan in the household has an annuity, you'll see this A here as well, which we're going to talk about in a second. But for now, I'm just going to choose the side-by-side comparison tool. And I'm going to say, well, okay, what would things look like if I added, for example, 25%, if I took 25% of that $2 million, so 500,000, and moved it into that fixed index annuity that I was showing you before. And now we can see that, in fact, in order to switch, I sort of like to view the difference, if it's positive, as a green number rather than a red number. Okay, so you can see here the fixed index annuity, at least in the global financial crisis, added a lot of stability. So it basically meant you wouldn't have had to take a pay cut through the global financial crisis. Great, right? We can look at it in the dot-com bubble, see very similar thing. And similar thing in the stagflation era. Now, you're probably saying to yourself a few things right now. Oh, okay, so the annuity always helps. Well, yes and no. If I put 50% in the annuity and compared it to the household plan, the story is a little more complicated. You still might prefer the blue line. Certainly it's better through a lot of this, but wow. Toward the end of the plan, this plan actually runs to 0 and depends entirely on the annuity for income. So that is a clear trade-off that would be happening in this case. And it's probably one of our first informal results of kind of looking at this sort of research on this, is that too much in an annuity in times like stagflation can really lead to some interesting results. So there's no free lunch in the world, right? And so it would be surprising if you couldn't find places where there's a clear trade-off between things. So that's definitely one of them. Just for the heck of it, we'll look at the Great Depression as well. This is kind of an interesting one to compare to stagflation, because stagflation is mostly about inflation, sideways returns, not great returns, but inflation. The Great Depression actually had deflation, so it's actually helpful for fixed index type investments. Another thing to note here is the retirement stress test is not, it's not a time machine. It's not saying, hey, we put you back, in the 70s, we gave you bell bottoms, you're driving a Chevy Nova. No, all it's doing is putting your plan through the returns and inflation of that period. Now, that may just sound like an academic distinction for kind of the normal stress testing we do, but actually it's a big deal. Like in the Great Depression, there was no Social Security, but that stress test included Social Security, right? So really all we're doing is hitting it with the returns and inflation from that period. The same is true for annuities. So you need to be careful to understand, we don't know what your fixed index annuity caps would have been in stagflation. They didn't exist. So you could do a model that sort of tried to pretend it would know, but we don't really know what they would do. So what you're doing in the stress test is saying, hey, given my current assumptions about how this annuity will work, how would it react through this kind of inflation and return scenario? Right, that's a really important caveat. Okay, the second thing that you can do, so this was comparing, a plan with and without an annuity. We could do the same thing, with the variable annuity and say, and all I've done is move, again, 500,000 to the variable annuity in this case, and a similar impact. You can look at stagflation. And sure enough, it also has that rough end. And I believe, yep, it has a very rough end if I put too much in the variable annuity. Okay, so the second thing you can do with annuities is look at how they just zoom in on the annuity itself through these periods and see how it would have performed. So these annuities I actually do have starting in, I think it's 4 or 5 years from now. So I wanted to show an accumulation phase and a withdrawal phase. And that's what you're seeing here. You can see that this annuity in the global financial crisis, starting in November of 07, would never have had a step up. It did have these guaranteed step ups because I had a 7% roll up going on, but and so you can see here how the benefit base was going up over time, but it never recovered enough to hit that benefit base and get a step up again, which means that the withdrawals were always the same. I could look at, go to the 25% one. Could look at the fixed index annuity, same accumulation phase, and you can see. I must have turned off the I must have put this one on. Let me go back in here. I think I accidentally edited. So I'm going back to the annuities. I think I had intended to have this one have withdrawal rate increase. I think that is set. Oh, no, that makes sense. I wouldn't see the withdrawal rate increase in the benefit base. So, all right, so the benefit base is staying the same. It did get a step up early on here in early 08, right? And then over time, it never got another step up. Finally, it started getting some credited returns here. This is probably way past that 5-year period, so it's only getting 2% credited returns. This is one of those annuities where I had it, the benefit base is going up by the credited returns. And in fact, this is one where those, kind of hypothetical credited returns are they still hit the benefit base later on. So you can see this one ran out of money in that same situation where there's a table at the bottom, and here you'll see how the withdrawal rate is going up. So 6.5, 7, 7.5, 8, right? Okay, so this is a great way to kind of explain to yourself, how does this thing work, right? You're not even asking, is it good or bad? Would it help me to add this to the plan or not? You're just zooming into it. And instead of saying, oh, do I like stackable return guarantees? Do I like, you're just saying, all right, how's the thing perform? And you're hitting it with a bunch of different scenarios. So we can look at stagflation. You can see it runs out of money much faster, but this one happens to have that extra feature. So the third thing you can do, and by the way, this can be really helpful with clients, right? Because again, explaining the jargon is just, it's too much, right? You want to say, so what? Show me how it works. It's sort of like, giving somebody the specs to an engine versus, letting them get in the car and giving them the keys. You can also pit annuities head to head and say, okay, what's the difference between these two things in this scenario? So I'll go back to global financial crisis just because that's so recent, most people remember it. And what you see here now is in blue, you see the withdrawals from the fixed index annuity. These are, if you're going to do this, you're going to want to make sure they're the same dollar amount, right? We don't want to compare, $500,000 fixed index annuity to a $200,000 variable annuity. So typically what I do is I just copy the plan and change the annuity. If the annuity has more, or if the plan has more than one annuity, you will be able to compare them to each other. from inside the same plan. But you can see here, okay, there's a clear trade-off between this variable annuity and the fixed annuity. The variable annuity provides less income, but it also doesn't run out of money, right? Which may seem sort of obvious, but when you see it in pictures, it's much clearer. The fixed index annuity does run out of money. And I hear from people who use annuities that that's often how they talk with their clients. They sort of say, like, we should just kind of assume this will run out of money at some point. And here you can see it also provides much more income. So this is just a clear trade-off. Which would you rather have? An annuity that may go to zero in a situation like this, or but provides more income, or an annuity that would provide less income but maybe not run out of money as quickly. So here we see actually in the stagflation, both of them ran out of money. And so here, probably a more compelling case could be made that it's not worth taking less income. Okay, so those are, just to run over those again, those are the three ways that you can evaluate annuities in plans. Probably the most important overall is, what's the impact on the plan? Is this good or bad or indifferent? And there, as I said, we don't put our finger on the scale here at all. We try to be as accurate as we can and allow you to put the variables, the inputs in correctly, and then just let the cards fall on the plan. Second, explore how a particular annuity works. Kind of seeing, okay, how does the jargon actually play out in the real world? And then finally, comparing annuities head to head. So sort of if you're looking at two annuities, trying to figure out which one, if any, you might want to use, it's a great way to do that. So the latter two are kind of zooming in and really helping people understand annuities. But the first one is our way of helping you not do annuity planning in a silo, right? We do hear people say, like, oh, it stinks when I'm doing planning. I do my planning over here, and then I have my annuities, and it's never entirely clear what the effect is. In fact, I've played with probability of success software and seen you add the annuity and your probability of success just goes down because maybe the fees are higher or whatever. But that's not really the effect you're looking for. You're looking for, if I spent the same amount, would my ride be smoother? Or could I, maybe it would make me spend less, but my ride is smoother. Or maybe, in a few cases, I can actually spend more and my ride is smoother. That's what you want to know. You want to get back to this question of, how does it affect my life? And that's what we really focused on in producing these new features, and is what we'll focus on as we expand annuity coverage in the coming couple months. So with that, let's go to some Q&A.
So a quick question that we can address. Two people asked in different ways about the example households in the software. Have they been updated to have the new annuity and IRMA features? Also, if not, is there a way they could have a sample client to just show the annuity? And so maybe there's a third sample household we can have that would have annuities in there. So at this point, they have not been added, Justin, unless you have an update on that.
Nope, they have not been changed. The IRMA features are there for everything. So in a way, there's no way not to have IRMA bracket management. We've always covered IRMA we always treat it as a tax, but we didn't have the bracket management for Roth conversions to IRMA brackets. So that's everywhere. If you go to those example plans, you'll see that in Tax Lab. But no, the example households don't have annuities in any plans, but we could actually we could also just add a plan to the household that has an annuity. That's something we could definitely do.
And just a friendly reminder, please put your questions in the Q&A and not the chat. It's hard to manage those. Okay, so the questions in the Q&A, and I'll try to navigate the ones in the chat as well. But there is one that's not about annuities that I want to make sure was the very first question that we received. So I want to make sure we touch on it. Is there a way to discount assets via LLC for Roth conversion for purposes of reducing taxes due on conversion, then being able to show the full value for income, accumulation, and legacy purposes?
I'm not entirely sure what that question is let's handle that. If we could email that person.
Yeah.
Let's stick to the annuity stuff for now.
Okay. I will answer that one. Okay, so do you have one you want to handle? Well, I guess someone says, can you please advise where one can do the QLACs and the software that you referred to earlier?
Yeah, that's a great question. So any I don't know what you'd call it, sort of traditional annuity, the pension type annuity, you would add in the income section as other income. So we have lots of people who have been doing this planning for a long time. So if it's a QLAC, you'd get your quote on what it is. I'm just going to make up numbers here, and it was coming from an IRA, presumably, so it's ordinary income. And you'd reduce the IRA for whatever the purchase price of this is. And then you would just make sure that it lasts until John's death. So that's how those work. If it's a QLAC, it's going to be a delayed annuity. So you'd put in the correct year when that annuity starts. So any deferred annuity, you would do that way. If you had something that was, maybe it's a joint, SPIA or something, then you'd also be able to put in if it has any kind of survivorship change. So if it's, $1,000 a month, but it's 50% survivorship, you could put in, if it's 50% for both. You can do more complicated things where it's different depending on who dies, right? And that's how you would handle SPIAs and DIAs.
Does the software illustrate differences between legacy amount in an annuity and versus no annuity?
Yes, it does. So let's see. So there's a few ways to look at that. In the stress test, you get to look at the plan's most realistic way. Now we don't know what future returns will be for anybody, so you want to look at a range, good, bad. And what you'll see is the difference in the portfolio balance at the end. So here we see that the balance with the fixed index annuity is lower. Lower by, so the balance, the no annuity plan is 1.25 million, and the plan with the annuity is 1.03 million. So that's a great place to look, and you would just want to look through examples and see them head to head. You can also, I didn't mention this earlier, but it's worth mentioning, for things that aren't a stress test. So for things like, viewing the cash flows here, right? You can see here's my fixed index annuity withdrawals. It kind of looks funny here because it's happening before Social Security, then it kind of stacks on top of them. If I switch it to nominal, you'll see it just stays the same through time. So here it's just 3330 for the entire plan. You can decide for these more straight line appreciation type views, you can decide how you want the annuity to show for a client. The default is that the only things that you'll show are the guaranteed increases. So if I go back to the annuity, go back to annuity settings, and go to benefit increases, in advanced settings, I say, hey, in basic projections, should I show basically no effect of growth, just show guaranteed growth, or specify my own rate of growth during the withdrawal phase, which defaults to 0, or should I use the average returns of the portfolio or the index with caps and so on from the inputs itself? You can do either one, and that will affect what you see in that cash flow section. So if I had this fixed index annuity actually triggering increases based on average growth, you might see the yellow kind of stepping up over time. And that would also change what you would see in Life Hub. So here in Life Hub, if I expand everything, go to the fixed index annuity, I can see, okay, it does run to zero, even under average returns, right? And so here you're going to see that effect as well. Even right here by 2045, my portfolio is about 2.5 million. If I switch back to the household plan, I have 3 million, right? So it is a way to kind of view the trade-off in portfolio balances.
Okay. Does the software account for income from a qualified annuity offsetting RMDs?
It does. So by default, it will be set. I think this is not set to be a qualified annuity, but if it were, oh, this one didn't have any. If I change the account type to be a traditional IRA, there is a setting down here, advanced settings under income. It's the only one in this case. So first of all, any withdrawals from the annuity will count as RMDs if you're in RMD phase, and they'll offset other required RMDs. There's also a setting that says, hey, if my RMD is great from this annuity is greater than what my guaranteed withdrawal is, take that. So my understanding is many annuities, allow that. Now that's only going to happen if you have a pretty good account balance, right? So, so that's one setting. It defaults to yes, so mostly you won't have to adjust that. But yes, if the annuity has RMDs or is RMD subject, any withdrawals from it will count and against the RMDs that are required from the whole set of deferred accounts.
Someone said the specificity of an annuity would be helpful. Can I use this for any type of annuity, meaning immediate annuity versus deferred annuity types of fixed interest annuity or equity indexed annuity or VA annuity? Or VA,
Yeah, so I mean, some of those terms, so we chose to call equity indexed annuity, fixed index annuity, potato in this case. We are adding registered index linked annuities, RILAs. So you can right now you can do those two. You'll soon see RILAs. For SPIAs and DIAs, you would enter those as an income stream. We may put SPIA and DIA options in the annuity section just because conceptually they all kind of live there at some point, but you can already do SPIA and DIA planning in Income Lab.
Does the income area handle an inflation factor for QLACs, SPIAs, DIAs with an annuity inflation?
So you can put in a custom inflation rate, which is probably your most. I don't even know if there are true inflation linked SPIAs and DIAs. I know they've existed before, but I'm not sure if they're available today. So typically you're either going to go not adjusted for inflation, so it's nominal, or a custom inflation rate, I think. But if there were an annuity that's inflation linked, you could do it that way. Yeah.
Does the software accommodate inheriting an annuity and how that impacts taxes?
It does. So if it's a non-qualified annuity, it has its own tax treatment. And so that's treated as, gains come out first. It's gains first treatment. And then if it's inherited, you inherit the basis and the gain. So there's no step up in basis. And that's all handled in the tax calculations here. Yeah. If it's a an IRA, it's taxed as an IRA. That's how it works.
Okay. Some of these are specific annuity questions, but about modeling things, but I'll tackle here. If I do sell an annuity, I try to use the least surrender terms. Do you have flexible options for surrender schedules?
Yeah. So when mentioned earlier that right now these annuities are all annuities with living benefits where we're modeling the guaranteed income. In those cases, the withdrawals are only from the guaranteed income, and those don't trigger surrender charges. So when we add you tell us how you're going to distribute that, a key factor will be, typically you're not going to want to trigger surrender charges, right? So allowing you to put limits, tell us what the, period is, and so on. So that's one reason it was a little slower to get to you in the app, is there's some added complexity there. So we'll be handling that.
And on that note, most of these annuity terms change after the guaranteed periods or change again after surrender. I imagine maybe he's saying annuitization or after the surrender period ends. Does the team plan to offer changes after these time frames?
So if there are things other than, for example, changes in caps and participation rates, things like that, that you want to see in the software, like some sort of change in withdrawal rate or fees, I know a few people have already told us there are annuities that charge a different fee during deferral versus during income. So that is something that we're gonna add. We don't want to overload people with options, but for the ones that are, really important and people use them, we're happy to add them. So if you have, particular annuity structures that you don't think we're adequately modeling, please let us know.
And then someone said, can the annuity module be used for modeling government pensions?
I know we have had some, so certainly you can add government pensions in as a pension in the other income section. I do know some people have been asking for special inflation adjustment options there, and that is on our roadmap. So sort of a, inflation plus or limited type of inflation treatment. So that's going to be your one limitation there right now. So again, reach out to us if there's something specific, some specific treatment that you need for the government pensions. Now people tend to either treat those as adjusted for inflation or put in a custom rate.
Someone said, if you're going to model a MIGA right now, how would you do it? We can address that one-on-one too.
Yeah, it would depend on how I'm trying to use it. So if I want it to kind of just show it growing, I can already do that. I could treat it as an annuity with no withdrawals, and with a fixed rate. But if I want to have it kind of flow into the plan, I probably would do something slightly different, like maybe use there are some kind of workarounds that you could do to show it correctly in the software. Obviously, the goal eventually is not to have workarounds on that.
And we will reach out to that user as well. Okay, so someone said, are you able to bring up the screen that compares several annuities?
Yes. Go back there. And it's only, oh no, I went to taxes. It's only two, so you can only compare two at once. There probably is a brain out there that can handle looking at 3, 4, 5, 6 at once, but mine is not it. So we go to retirement stress test, which is this little clipboard with a heartbeat on it. Go to the A up here, and then, and it'll just find the first one it can find. If you want to look at a different one, that you just use these choosers.
Okay. We do have a couple more questions.
Okay.
Someone said the retirement stress test feature, this is not annuity based. I would find it very useful to model any period of time, not just periods significant to economic downturns. Any way to model a custom time frame? Not
right now, but that has been a request we've had. It's certainly something we could do. It wouldn't actually even be that hard. So yeah, not at the moment, but I definitely hear you. By the way, something dawned on me. If you're in the annuity section of retirement stress test and you want to go back to not comparing, just click the X, and then you'll go back to the current one.
And since you're here, could we also compare pension with a diminished COLA with Social Security with its COLA?
Yeah, I mean, you can do any kind of side-by-side comparison here. So like if you wanted to, I don't know what exactly the scenario is that you have in mind, but I've definitely seen people do, for example, taking a lump sum versus taking the pension payments. So maybe there are multiple COLA options or uh, inflation options on an annuity or a pension you're looking at. You could do those head to head here. Annuities head to head, you'd be comparing plans head to head. Well, what if I took the pension? What if I took the payout? What if I chose this inflation treatment? That just use the comparison feature here.
And with that, we are at the end of the hour. We got a lot of questions answered, and we have a few more that we will get back to you we'll reach out to you about your questions. Just a friendly reminder, there's a survey at the end, and thank you all for attending. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks, everybody.